I wanted to make this video because this is just the culmination of probably years worth of work and explanations of why I do what I do and how to prepare for what is coming. I think that what is coming is just going to be the systemic end of everything that we know. This whole world is built off of debt, generational, global, fiat, Ponzi debt, one in which cannot be paid. There's an estimated $700,000 per person in the United States of debt that is owed, which is an unsurmountable number, considering that most people actually have zero savings and have no means of ever paying that back in their entire lifetime. And yet that's how this paradigm is continuing to work. What is coming that I see is not only the collapse of the financial economy, the consumer economy, the America that you know, but also a rise of a new world order, one in which Putin is talking about building with China. I've covered this many times. I dubbed them the anti-hegemon because they're ideologically different, culturally different, but they all stand in stark opposition to the Anglo-American Zionist world power current order that has been built out of Bretton Woods after World War II, after whatever, the petrodollar. All these things have gone into creating this unique experience of America being able to do whatever the hell they want to do for the last, 50, 60 years in creating wars and debt and all this other stuff. You notice that I never once on this channel ever brought up Russiagate, all this stuff that the liberal media has been touting for the last 2 years, because if there was one foreign country that influenced the United States policy, it would be Israel, not Russia. Israel is the one that pulls the strings behind the powers. Israelis are the ones that own and control the world's central banks through the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds were the ones that created Israel. They're the ones that got the 1917 Balfour Declaration. They are the synagogue of Satan. These are the guys that are out there creating debt and death. They are the current beneficiaries of this world order. They are the ones that you cannot question. And they're the ones that are pushing us for war with Iran. So the situation that is being built up is that the current world order, this Anglo-American Zionist power, is built off of global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme that can never be gotten rid of. It is a rigged game from the very beginning. The Fed has capitulated into creating everlasting bubbles, which will only lead to a hyperinflation and the destruction of everything, which they will profit off of too, because they are in prime position in inflation and deflation to be on the right side. And because nobody understands what they're up against, nobody will call them out. Nobody will change the system. And that is why I own physical silver, because there's no way of being able to hedge against what is coming other than physical silver in your possession. And the season that we're entering into is going to be a hyperinflationary system, one in which we're going to have rising real costs of real things, starting with what I'm going to cover today with oil, and it's going to spill over into everything as more and more money gets pumped into the system to keep the system going. Now, I mentioned in one of my most famous videos, the 3 coming false flags, talking about how there's 3 great challenges to the American empire, and that is international powers that are rising, namely Russia, China, Iran, all these other nations that are anti-hegemon. There's the unsustainable financial paradigm of this global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme. And there's also the rising truth movement. All 3 of those have to be addressed in order for this current world order to keep going forward. And it's my belief that they are going to push for a false flag, 1, 2, or 3, on all of those levels to get their power even more consolidated and to eliminate any opposition, including truth, the rest of the world that's been living under this global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme, and an establishment of a new world order, one in which I believe that they're going to use some sort of mark of the beast type crypto money to enforce their will and power into the next 100 years. I don't think they're going to succeed. I think they're going to fail forward in the most spectacular manner, and it's going to start this May. I don't know if many people even understand what's been going on with Iran, but Iran has been the focus of this Zionist power because they are the last strong power in the Middle East that stands in stark opposition to this Anglo-American Zionist power. They have recruited the Saudis, which is another barbaric puppet of the United States. They behead people. They fund all these radical Muslims that destabilize all these other countries. Mike Pompeo, who's the Secretary of State, announced to the media as of May 2nd, the State Department would no longer grant sanction waivers to any country currently importing Iranian crude oil. So last November, they issued 180-day waivers to 8 countries to give them more time to find alternative sources of oil, and now their time is running out. They have essentially cut in half Iranian exports through the threat of these sanctions, and now May 2nd, the United States is going to go full retard and say nobody's allowed to import Iranian oil. And the Iranians have already said that they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, that nobody will get oil if that happens. Now, you have to remember, China, Japan, Korea, a lot of these Asian nations have been importing oil, and it is a market that will not end because these other nations know that this isn't about Iran. This is about American power and what they're going to put up with. So mind you, that when somebody puts economic sanctions on a country, that is the precursor for outright war. Economic war is war. If somebody threatens your way of life and says you can't work here, you can't buy stuff from there, that's a war against you. Well, that's the same thing against this country. And that's what we did with Japan. We brought on Pearl Harbor because we did economic sanctions against Japan. We cut off their oil, we cut off their steel, we cut off their power, and that forced Japan to do what they did with Pearl Harbor, even though we did crack their code and we knew they were coming. So this is what's going to happen with Iran. They're going to keep up the economic sanctions until there's something that happens that breaks. They're hoping, they're praying that Iran actually does militaristic things so then they can come in and go, oh, see, we have to defend ourselves. And this has been plotted for years in advance. This is coming. Netanyahu just got reelected. Trump has passed his Russiagate. We got 2 years until the next election. The economy's still pumping. What better time to start a war with Iran?
I guess my question is, how many times do we have to prove that these people are blowing up people? Now, never mind if they get a nuclear weapon, when do we send them an airmail message to Tehran?
That old Beach Boys song, Bomb Iran. Bomb, 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 bomb. Anyway.
What do you mean support negotiation? What are we going to negotiate about? What I would say is, listen, you see that desert out there? I want to show you something. You pick up your cell phone, even at traveling rates. You pick up your cell phone, and what do they call it?
Roaming charges.
Roaming charges. You pick up your cell phone and you call somewhere in Nebraska and you say, okay, let it go. So there's an atomic weapon goes over ballistic missiles in the middle of the desert that doesn't hurt a soul. Maybe a couple of rattlesnakes and scorpions or whatever. And then you say, see, the next one is in the middle of Tehran. So we mean business.
But this is been in works since probably prior to 9/11. I mean, here's General Wesley Clark talking about this Zionist plan.
Often when there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic. And it's very easy to blame people who criticize certain acts of the Israeli government as anti-Semitics and to bring up the Holocaust and the suffering of the Jewish people, and that justify everything we do to the Palestinians.
To have the United States devastate and destabilize and destroy all of the Middle East, except for our allies, so that Israel can have their Greater Israel Project.
And by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Then just prior to Bush leaving office, here is Seymour Hersh talking about how Dick Cheney wanted to create a false flag to start a war with Iran.
How many press are here? Anyway, there was a meeting among the items considered and rejected, which is why the New Yorker did not publish it on grounds that it wasn't accepted. One of the items was why not there was a dozen ideas proffered how to trigger a war. The one that interested me the most was why don't we in our shipyard build 4 or 5 Iranian boats that look like Iranian PT boats, put Navy SEALs on them with a lot of arms, and the next time one of our boats goes through the Straits of Hormuz, start a shoot-up. Might cost some lives, and it was rejected because you can't have Americans killing Americans. But that's the level of stuff we were talking about, provocation.
The Zionists were frustrated with Obama because they couldn't get an outright war with Iran or Syria. They put up Hillary and Trump, both of which declared that they were loyal to Israel, kissed the hand, begged at AIPAC. It was decided before we even had an election. Now we have Trump in office, and I created this Trump prophecy series talking about how I used his words and what the man said, that he was going to do the bidding of the Zionists.
I'll tell you one thing, unlike America, Israel seems to be able to fight wars very quickly. What is your secret? Because we don't seem to have the hang of that.
The secret is that we have America.
Nah.
And America, you see, the point is that Israel...
My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel. And frankly, a strong prime minister is a strong Israel. And you truly have a great prime minister. In Benjamin Netanyahu, there's nobody like him. He's a winner. He's highly respected. He's highly thought of by all. And people really do have great, great respect for what's happened in Israel. So vote for Benjamin. Terrific guy, terrific leader, great for Israel.
The secret is that we have America.
These are the same Zionists that lied about nuclear weapons in Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11.
Saddam is hell-bent on achieving atomic bombs, atomic capabilities as soon as he can. There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately.
As a Prime Minister of Israel, has Iran crossed your red line?
Well, the way I would say it, David, is they're in the red zone. You know, they're in the last 20 yards, and you can't let them cross that goal line. You can't let them score a touchdown, because that would have unbelievable consequences, grievous consequences for the peace and security of us all, of the world, really. You have to put greater pressure on them. You have to upgrade the sanctions. And they have to know that if the sanctions and diplomacy fails, they'll face a credible military threat. That's essential. Nothing else will do the job. And it's getting closer.
Who benefits? I tell you who benefits. Israel.
שהמחיר יהיה כבד מצוא, כרגע המחיר לא כבד מצוא, גם זו התקפה רבת היקף על הרשות הפלסטינית.
לפחד שהכל מתמוטט.
ואז רגע, אבל אז השופר מהעולם יגיד מה אתם כובשים? אתה לא מפחד מהעולם, ביבי.
במיוחד היום עם אמריקה, אני יודע מה זה אמריקה. אמריקה זה דבר שאפשר להזיז אותו בקלות, להזיז לכיוון הנכון.
הם אומרים שהם בעדינו, אבל כאילו...
לא יכולים.
אז כשאם אנחנו עושים איזה משהו, אז הם...
יש שווה, אז נניח שהם אומרים משהו. אז אמרו, 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בנו. זה אבסורד, יש לנו שם תמיכה כזאת, ואנחנו אומרים מה נעשה עם הממשל ההוא היה פרו-פלסטיני בצורה קיצונית. לא פחדתי להתעמת שם, לא פחדתי להתעמת עם קלינטון, לא פחדתי להתעמת עם אבו. בלאו הכי את המחיר הבינלאומי אני משלם, אז עדיף לקבל תמורה. תמורה לאגרה.
They get us to spend our money on wars that benefit them. They even tried it with the USS Liberty.
The Israelis and the Egyptians were going to war, and we were sent to the Med to listen.
We helped the mastermind the Six-Day War. The Israeli had their key defense people. We had our key defense people, and they all sat around for about a week. They plotted, planned what was going to happen in that war.
Didn't expect to be near a shooting war.
National Security had the tape of the pilots, Israeli pilots, talking to their controller, saying it's an American ship, and the controller says, attack it. People don't realize they napalmed that ship.
Big holes like this were blown in the rails around the gun mounts in front, and the men were thrown up in the air, and
that whole front part of the ship was red, running with blood.
And we got a message out. And it said, under attack, believed to be Arabs. Got one message back, help is on the way.
For the first time in history, our Commander-in-Chief demanded that U.S. forces abandon a mission to rescue a nearby U.S. Navy vessel, then under heavy deliberate attack by hostile military forces.
Israel attacked a U.S. naval vessel to sink it, to blame it on Egypt so that we would end up fighting for them. This is no different. So we have this nation that is backed by the Rothschild central bank money, that has this media complex that they own and control, that has the politicians in their back pocket.
The secret is that we have America.
And yet they bleed this country to death with wars that do not serve us, with debts that we end up having to pay them, to go fight nations that have no strategic interest in us, and then have a legitimate gripe against us. Look up Operation Ajax, where we overthrew a democratically elected moderate Mossadegh, and then put in the Shah that was an outright brutal dictator that we supported with the Savak and all the government contracts and military and oil contracts.
Surely, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States pulls the strings of the presidency?
Not entirely, but I think even a little too much, even for Israel interests.
You think the Jewish lobby in the United States is too powerful for the interests of Israel?
I think so. Sometimes they are disserving the interests of Israel because they're pushing around too many people.
Why would the President of the United States pay attention to that lobby?
They are strong.
Strong in what sense?
They are controlling many things.
Controlling what?
Newspapers, medias,
Your Majesty.
Banks, finances, and I'm going to stop there.
And then they finally overthrew them. And then what do? We supported Saddam in an 8-year war, the Iran-Iraq war, where over 1 million men died in Iran. 1 million! Like, we're still talking about the Civil War. 1 million men died in Iran for this. And we're responsible for that. So when war comes with Iran, look no further than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Zionists, the Israelis, the Rothschilds. This is what we're serving. All wars are bankster wars. And all these bankster wars serve the Zionist interest. This racist ideology that they are the chosen people with the chosen land. They concocted world wars for this. Palestine was 99% Arab prior to Israel being founded, and they were supposed to live in harmony, and they've done nothing but steal land and now shooting journalists and peaceful protesters. This is why I think Henry Kissinger said that Israel will not last 10 more years. People will wake up to this. I can tell you for a fact the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians already know this. We're the only fools that are still playing along in this game. And as soon as we recognize it and decide not to send our boys over to go fight any more foreign wars, that we've already been bled to death with these debts, and stop supporting these puppet politicians like Trump, their game is over.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war. One can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We could step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up. Who would know why? We can do a variety of things if we wish to increase the pressure. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just suggesting that this is not a either-or proposition. Of, it's just sanctions has to succeed or other things. We are in the game of using covert means against the Iranians. We could get nastier at that.
That was another neocon talking, and this is probably about 8 years ago, talking about creating another false flag with Iran. Iran is not a threat to the United States. End of story. Don't believe me? Listen to Pat Buchanan.
There are a number of people that want a war.
But is there really a vital threat coming from Iran as you see it?
I don't know. I don't. Look, Iran is not... Iran, I mean, during the Cold War, with due respect, Soviet Union had thousands of weapons. They could have destroyed us in an afternoon, and we could have done the same thing. I was around during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was genuinely terrifying. But Iran doesn't frighten me, and I don't think it should frighten the American people. They don't have a bomb. They haven't made a decision to build one. They don't have the means to deliver one. And the Israelis have 300 atomic bombs. I mean, who presents the existential threat to whom?
If you look at who's been pushing for a war with Iran the most, it is Israel and the neocons that got us into the last war. They proudly talk about how they get us to fight their wars. Here's a clip of Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu talking about their secret weapon.
But I'll tell you one thing, unlike America, Israel seems to be able to fight wars very quickly. What is your secret? Because we don't seem to have the hang of that.
The secret is that we have America.
Nah.
And America, you see, the point is that Israel...
If you think that was just a slip, please look into Project for a New American Century or the 1967 USS Liberty incident, where unmarked Israeli planes attacked and nearly sunk the most decorated ship in our fleet with the purpose of getting the United States to attack Egypt. A false flag attack, like an American ship sunk in the Strait of Hormuz, would also keep Iranian allies like Russia and China at bay, much like the 9/11 attacks kept them from using their power to stop the United States from invading Iraq. The world is a much different place than it was in 2000, and China and Russia have learned a lot, as they have been vocal opponents of many of the pressures the Anglo-American empire has applied to Iran.
What do you think of the president's attitude towards Israel? Is he a friend of Israel?
No, I think he's one of the worst things that's ever happened to Israel. You look at what's going on, and I know Bibi very well. In fact, he asked me if I do a commercial for him. I think I'm the only so-called celebrity that did a commercial for him.
The secret is that we have America.
My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel. And frankly, a strong prime minister is a strong Israel. And you truly have a great prime minister. In Benjamin Netanyahu, there's nobody like him. He's a winner. He's highly respected. He's highly thought of by all. And people really do have great, great respect for what's happened in Israel. So vote for Benjamin. Terrific guy, terrific leader, great for Israel.
The secret is that we have America.
What do you mean support negotiation? What are we going to negotiate about? What I would say is, listen, you see that desert out there? I want to show you something. You pick up your cell phone, even at traveling rates. You pick up your cell phone, and what are they called?
Roaming charges.
Roaming charges. You pick up your cell phone and you call somewhere in Nebraska and you say, okay, let it go. So there's an atomic weapon goes over ballistic missiles in the middle of the desert that doesn't hurt a soul. Maybe a couple of rattlesnakes and scorpions or whatever. And then you say, see, the next one is in the middle of terrorism. So we mean business. You want to be wiped out? Go ahead and take a tough position and continue with your nuclear development. You want to be peaceful? You want to be peaceful? Just reverse it all, and we will guarantee you that you can have a nuclear power plant for electricity purposes.
The secret is that we have America.
I'm opposed to our wasting our military in the Middle East on behalf of Zionist Israel. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, let me just tell you that Israel is a very, very important ally of the United States, and we are going to protect them 100%. 100%. They've been our most reliable. It's our true friend over there, and we're going to protect Israel 100%.
The secret is that we have America.
I said that there was no difference between Hillary or Trump during the 2016 election. And of course, nobody wanted to listen to me. Everybody thought make America great again. No, Trump is a debt and death mongering Zionist. He is going to drive us to war. The one thing I could give Obama credit for, despite doubling the national debt, despite opening the borders, despite, financially ruining this country, the one thing he did not do is get us into war with Syria and war with Iran.
You're saying you don't feel any pressure from Prime Minister Netanyahu in the middle of a campaign to try and get you to change your policy and draw a line in the sand? You don't feel any pressure?
When it comes to our national security decisions, any pressure that I feel is simply to do what's right for the American people. And I am going to block out any noise that's out there.
But now that the Zionists have Trump in their office, they're going to get it. So I created a series for the Silver Shield Group last year, just taking the words of Trump, and by their words you shall know them. And when people tell you who they are and what they believe, you should believe them. Trump first loved the poorly educated.
We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
He loves debt. He calls himself the king of debt.
I mean, these people are crazy. This is the United States government. First of all, you never have to default because you print the money. I hate to tell you, okay? So there's never a default. I'm the king of debt. I understand debt better than probably anybody. I know how to deal with debt so very well. I love debt.
He says, I love war, and I'm really good at it.
Who are you consulting with consistently so that you're ready on day one?
I'm speaking with myself, number one.
This is the Trump theory on war. I'm really good at war. I love war in a certain way. Including with nukes. Yes, including with nukes.
I love Israel, and I'm very pro-Israel.
I love Israel and honor and respect the Jewish faith and tradition.
Those four things are the ingredients to creating another Zionist war in the Middle East that Americans are going to spill their blood for and their fortunes.
When I become president, the days of treating Israel like a second-class citizen will end on day one. Thank you. And when I say something, I mean it. I mean it. I will meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu immediately. I have known him for many years and will be able to work closely together to help bring stability and peace to Israel and to the entire region. Meanwhile, every single day, you have rampant incitement and children being taught to hate Israel and to hate the Jews. It has to stop. When you live in a society where the firefighters are the heroes, little kids want to be firefighters. When you live in a society where athletes and movie stars are the heroes, little kids want to be athletes and movie stars. In Palestinian society, the heroes are those who murder Jews. We can't let this continue. We can't let this happen any longer. You cannot achieve peace if terrorists are treated as martyrs. Glorifying terrorists is a tremendous barrier to peace. It is a horrible, horrible way to think. It's a barrier that can't be broken. That will end, and it'll end soon, believe me. In Palestinian textbooks and mosques, you've got a culture of hatred that has been fermenting there for years, and if we want to achieve peace, they've got to go out and they've got to start this educational process. They have to end education of hatred. They have to end it, and now. There is no moral equivalency. Israel does not name public squares after terrorists. Israel does not pay its children to stab random Palestinians. You see, what President Obama gets wrong about deal-making is that he constantly applies pressure to our friends and rewards our enemies. That's what will happen when Donald Trump is President of the United States. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. And we will send a clear signal that there is no daylight between America and our most reliable ally, the State of Israel. The Palestinians must come to the table knowing that the bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable. They must come to the table willing and able to stop the terror being committed on a daily basis against Israel. They must do that. And they must come to the table willing to accept that Israel is a Jewish state and it will forever exist as a Jewish state. I love the people in this room. I love Israel. I love Israel. I've been with Israel so long in terms of I've received some of my greatest honors from Israel. My father before me, incredible. My daughter Ivanka is about to have a beautiful Jewish baby. In fact, it could be happening right now, which would be very nice as far as I'm concerned. So I want to thank you very much. This has been a truly great honor. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Trump recently just got rid of a whole bunch of people who are not for war with Iran and replacing them with hawks, warmongers, psychopaths that want to initiate and profit off of war. I am so positive that there is a war coming with Iran. And it's something that should not be a surprise to you guys. And it's going to be under the pretense of a false flag. And I go back to that Dick Cheney thing. So they stopped the idea because they couldn't have Americans killing Americans. Okay? But what's to stop Israel from killing Americans? Or Saudis killing Americans and blaming it on Iran? There's massive amount of evidence that 9/11 had Israeli connections, had Saudi connections, and what did we do? We went to war with Afghanistan. We went to war with Iraq. The Zionists want war to expand the Greater Israel Project. Israel is taking massive land grabs in Palestine. They've already taken all of Palestine, but now they're going after the last little pieces of it. And they're not going to be happy until they expand out into Iraq, out into Syria, out into the Middle East further. And they're using Americans to do it. That's why all these presidents go to AIPAC and kiss their finger. That's why Trump was the only American candidate to officially endorse Netanyahu. And that's why Netanyahu says, we have America.
The secret is that we have America. And America, you see, the point is that...
That's their secret. They have the halls of power in Congress. They're the major donors. They own the banking institutions. They own most of the media. They're able to switch American opinion on a dime to serve their interests. When is America going to wake up and realize that the real threat is the Zionists? Why are we fighting all these wars all over the place? Why are we spilling our blood all over the place? Why are we spending all of our money all over the place? Does it serve us? No, it gets us into trouble. And yet when war comes, you're going to see Make America Great Again and Make America Go Off to War Again. And the propaganda machine's going to churn up and they're going to say Iran did it and all this stuff because they want to destabilize the Middle East. Iran is the last standing power outside the Anglo-American Empire since we have destabilized every other country in the Middle East. And war is coming. So what can you do about this? Quite frankly, nothing. You could try to wake people up to this now, but people don't want to hear it. Trump has already increased the national debt by $1 trillion a year. Wait until we have war with Iran and the massive amount of debt that we're going to have to take on to fight that. Wait until we have an economic crisis that will result from an attack on Iran. I did a video called The Three Coming False Flags, talking about how this system is totally unsustainable, that has profited off of the banksters, and that they know it, and that they're going to seek an outside opponent to blame the collapse of the economy, to push forward with more hegemonic power in the United States, in the world, in the Middle East particularly, because that's where the oil is. And they're going to use this war, this terrorism, whatever it is, to crush internal dissent. We're already seeing it with Google and Facebook limiting free speech on YouTube and many other platforms. Wait until there's a war. Wait until the thought police come after this. So I just want to go on record before it gets out of hand. I hope that people share this video. And I hope people stop playing this Hegelian dialectic of Republican versus Democrats. They're all evil. That's all I got to say. Thank you.